Hello neighbors, it's Brad here at eTrailer, and today we're taking a look at installing the eTrailer base plate on our 2015 Jeep Grand Cherokee. Now your base plate is going to be one of 5 main components required for flat towing your vehicle, and the base plate creates a structural support that mounts to the frame of the vehicle, allowing you to hook up to your tow bar. And your tow bar is the connection point between the towed vehicle and the RV. Now there's also going to be your safety cables, which are going to attach to that base plate, and they're integrated into it, and that's also going to attach to the hitch on the RV. So in case we do have a disconnect, we still have those cables holding everything together. Now you're also going to need a braking system, which is going to allow you to slow and stop, have that towed vehicle do the same thing as you apply those brakes on the RV. There's also diode wiring, which is going to transmit your light sequence from the RV to the towed vehicle, letting people behind you know when you are braking, turning, or have your running lights on. You do have removable arms that you're going to put in place when you're ready to tow, and this is how you clip in using a pin and clip to your tow bar. Now this tow bar, we have the eTrailer SD, has our specific ends, which is going to work with Demco and eTrailer base plates. But not to worry, if you get a different brand tow bar, there's adapters available that you can put onto the ends, and that way you can still attach to your base plate. Now, as far as installation goes, this is one of the easier base plates that I've done on a vehicle, as it does kind of just replace the factory tow hook spots. And now you do have a crossbar that goes across, but it bolts in directly where your tow hooks would be, and there's minimal trimming required to allow this to be installed. Now, a lot of times you do have to cut out to make sure that there's openings for your base plate to pop through, but this one, we just removed these covers here where your tow hooks would be, so it made it nice and easy. And depending on your braking system where you mount that up, you will have to trim out a little bit of the grill. Now, our Grand Cherokee today actually didn't have the factory tow hooks, and that made it pretty easy actually to install. So if you have a version with tow hooks or without, doesn't matter. Those weld nuts are still on the chassis, and so it's going to bolt up all the same. Overall, this installation is pretty easy, so let's take a look at that now. That way you can get your base plate installed. We're going to begin our installation here on our wheel well. Now, in order to get to our rivets, we're going to be drilling these out. You might want to turn the steering wheel to open that up, and you may have to do that for each side. So our plastic rivets here, there's 2 of those. We're going to drill them out. So I'm using, a fairly small drill bit. Basically, if you can get that center drilled out, it should pop out fairly easily. Just drill straight in here. And once you kind of drill straight through, a lot of times when you bring your bit back out, this should be loose enough to where it'll come with it. So go ahead and do that for both of these, and then we'll repeat on the other side. And not to worry, the kit does come with replacement rivets, so just because we're drilling these out, we'll be able to replace these, and it'll be back to OEM once we're done with the installation. Now you'll find here kind of where the fascia meets the front quarter. We're going to go ahead, there's a 10mm screw, we're going to take that out. And throughout the process, any hardware that we take off, I recommend having a nice organized spot to keep it. It's going to make reinstallation a lot easier. So with that out, we should be able to pop this trim out. There's going to be some clips here, so just work your way from the bottom up. And as long as you get past this little seam here, that's kind of what we're looking at. Now be careful, this is plastic, and if you pry it too much, it's going to cause a crease, and unfortunately that's probably not going to come out. So once you're at this point, what I'm going to do is just take some painter's tape and put it on our plastic tabs here, because as we pull the fascia off and put it back on later, we don't want that scratching against the clear coat. So just a little added protection. So now we're going to open up our hood, and we're going to have 2 plastic push pins here that we're going to remove. Now the instructions say 3. I'm not seeing the 3rd one yet, so if we find that later on, I'll definitely keep you posted. But at this point, a trim panel tool works really well on plastic push pins. We have these available here at eTrailer. They're really, really handy for things like this. If not, a flathead screwdriver also works. So just kind of slide it in the slot where there's a spot for your flathead, pop this out, and the rest should come with it. Now this is kind of clipped in here to kind of keep the grill in place, so just pry up lightly here and we should get that to kind of release, and you can do that on the other side as well. Now underneath our front fascia, right kind of where this chrome meets the plastic, you're going to have 4 plastic push pins, so we'll go ahead and get those removed. Now, being kind of at the front of the vehicle, these see the road grime, so they may fight you a little bit more than the ones underneath the hood, but if you break these, don't be surprised. These kind of, it's kind of normal for plastic push pins to break. You can definitely pick these up. We have these available here at eTrailer. You can generally go to an auto parts store and get those as well. Now, also tucked under here, you can see our wheel well liner. There's this quarter turn plastic pin here, so make sure you pull this out. This is going to have one on each side, so this one's kind of fighting me a little bit, but we should be able to twist that and get it out of place. There we go. So do that on both sides. Before we get ready to pull our fascia off, I recommend setting up a place to set your fascia to where it's not going to get scratched, and you might want to grab an extra set of hands as it can be cumbersome. But I'm also going to put a little bit of painter's tape here where the fascia meets the front fender here. This is going to just kind of help ensure, again, as we're pulling this off, but also putting it back on, we're just not rubbing paint on paint and scratching our vehicle in the process. Now, if you need a little bit extra room here, there is going to be another clip along our fender or our wheel well liner here. So just kind of as you peel this back, be careful. The clip may stay here. If you need to pry on it, you can kind of go under and pry right about this area here, and that clip should come with it. And as far as getting the fascia off, you're going to start on the corners on both sides and kind of work your way towards the middle. And where that screw was that we took out, it's kind of seated in the plastic, so just kind of lift it up and over that, and that should help move this along. And as you kind of work your way down, you should find the clips, so just kind of take your time here. And again, lifting these clips, make sure that those didn't reseat, and you should be able to kind of get this to separate. And once you get both sides popped off, don't just yank the fascia back. You're probably going to have an electrical connection for your fog lamp, so you want to make sure to separate that. So again, having that extra set of hands to hold the fascia while you unplug that is going to be super helpful. So now with Joe, we're going to go ahead and he's going to help me get this fascia off. So just take your time here again, just work on those clips. Now you can see we have our fog lamps attached, and these should snap off pretty easy. We got just two little plastic clips here that kind of lock it into place, so if you peel those back, we should be able to separate that pretty easily. And then set your fascia aside somewhere safe where it's not going to get scratched or fall or get damaged. Now we're going to remove our bottom air deflector here. Depending on the years, ours has the same plastic twist knobs that we had kind of underneath the fascia here. So just go ahead, you can remove those, and if you have plastic push pins, it's going to be similar. Just get those taken off, and then we can put our air deflector to the side. Now your air deflector may have some tow hook covers. If that's the case, you're going to want to take those off. And then we're going to be trimming along here. These tabs kind of, it follows this line pretty easily. So whatever cutting tool you have, it could be a Dremel. I'm using a multi-tool here. You could even use a pair of snips, but we'll go ahead, get these cut off real quick. Now on our passenger side, attached to the radiator, there is going to be this plastic flap. We're going to be cutting this, and there's a flat line up here. I'm just going to follow that. Now, if you're using a powered tool, just be careful. Kind of pry this away from the radiator. You don't want to obviously make contact, and we'll just get this cut off. Now, depending if you have factory tow hooks or not, it's really going to change kind of the installation of this, and you're going to have to follow along with the instruction manual because we don't have tow hooks. So I'm going to do this for the non-tow hook vehicles. But on our driver's side, we have a 10mm bolt that's attaching our wheel well liner to our skid plate. So we'll go ahead and take that off. And we're only doing this on the driver's side because this is going to give us access to when we bolt this up. On the other side, it's pretty open, so you don't need to do that on the passenger side. But again, this is only if you don't have factory tow hooks. Now, if you do have tow hooks, you're going to be removing the 10mm on the passenger side and then following along with that instruction manual, as it is quite a bit different than the non-tow hook vehicle. Now, if you have adaptive cruise control, you are going to want to remove that, and you can just kind of let it hang. Again, we don't have it here, so we're going to move along, and we're getting ready to put our base plate up, so you might want to grab an extra set of hands. We want to make sure we have our hardware ready, so we're going to have 4 bolts. Make sure you put the split washer and the flat washer on there, and it's just going to go into the weld nuts where the tow hooks normally are. So have these ready, and we're also going to want to make sure that we put some Loctite. Now this is included in the kit, so just kind of coat the threads here, and that way it's going to hold this in place for the lifespan of the base plate. So with Aiden here, he's going to be helping me get our base plate, and this just slides in where those factory tow hooks would go, as I mentioned previous. So what we're going to do is just get one started on each side, and that way it's holding up our base plate. Got the hole lined up. I'll get this started now. Our AC line is kind of right here. You kind of just have to push against it. Just make sure that you're not damaging it in the process, but a little bit of movement here should get us able to start our hardware. Now with it supported with 1 bolt started on each side, I'll go ahead and get our back bolts in place. Now passenger side's pretty wide open, but since we took our wheel well liner off here, that's going to allow us to get to that back hole to get that bolt in place. So go ahead, get these all started. Now we'll go back and tighten these down with a 17mm socket. Now we are going to be coming back with a torque wrench, so as long as we're just cinching these up to where they're snug, the torque wrench will take care of making sure that it's perfectly in place and tightened down properly. Now, if you need a torque wrench, we have them available here at eTrailer. You can generally go to an auto parts store and rent one for free. But again, this is going to ensure that these are going to stay in for the lifespan of the base plate, but also not be too tight, putting stress on the threads and the weld nuts. If you don't have tow hooks, we're going to go to our fascia and pop out these covers, and that's going to allow our base plate to pop through to be able to get our arms in place. So just push back on these tabs here, and it should pop out fairly easily. We'll go ahead and do that on both sides. So now we need to put our safety cables on, and this is just in case of a catastrophic disconnect. Instead of just relying on those weld nuts to hold it up, it's also going to go around our bumper beam to create a nice little added support here. So I'm going to go ahead and loop this up. We want to make sure that we have clearance to get our fascia put back on, and the bumper beam seems to be the best option to be able to do that. So I'll just kind of route this up through here. And there's a lot of different ways to be able to do this. Main thing is you're just going to want to create a nice connection between the two. So we do have the quick links to be able to do that. And what you can do is actually take your quick link and make a loop here to go around the base plate as well as the bumper beam. So we'll just put this here and then put this around our cable. And pull this tight. And then we can go ahead and we can loop this to the same quick link, but this is going to create a nice loop around all of this. Main thing, make sure you're not in the way of your arms or anything like that. And this should be a nice sturdy way to do it. And we can go ahead and repeat the same way on the other side. With our safety cables in place, we can go ahead and put our trimmed air deflector in place as well. Now, as far as getting your fascia back up, we're at a point where you can do that, but if you are installing the rest of your flat toe components, it's a lot easier to run all your wires and everything while the fascia is off, so I highly recommend that. Now, when putting your fascia back up, also make sure that you're reinstalling the harness on the fog lamps, snap those in on both sides, and the rest of it's just going to go in reverse order of taking it off, and then I'll show you how to do the rivets. Now, once you get your fascia put back in the reverse order, you probably notice that you may have to trim out for your wiring. So depending on what braking system you have, we have the Brake Buddy Stealth, so it's a little bit different, but just kind of cut out enough to get your umbilical put into your 6-pole if that's what you have. Now, as far as doing the rivets that we drilled out previous, the ones that we have included in the kit are going to require a rivet gun to be able to get these in place. And if you've never done it before, you're going to take the larger diameter side, put that in to where it's nice and flush, and your rivet gun essentially just pulls that center stack, and it acts kind of like a drywall anchor. It widens it out, so as you squeeze, make sure that you're flush against that button again, and that's going to pop off, leaving us with our rivet in place. So I'll go ahead and do that to the other holes that we have. Now, if you need a rivet gun, we have them available here at eTrailer, and this is a plastic rivet gun, but using one for aluminum and stainless will work all the same. Just it's a similar concept. Just make sure that you're putting the fitting that's going to match the diameter of your rivet. And that was a look and installation of the eTrailer base plate on a 2015 Jeep Grand Cherokee.